Hi, I'm Meta Spencer, and today I think we'll go to British Columbia, where it is unbearably hot, and to Ottawa, where it is going to get a little hotter later in the week. I'm in Toronto, and we may be joined by somebody in Calgary, Trudy Gouvier, but she's having computer problems and not so sure. But let me introduce you to my dearest, dear old friends. We are old peaceniks who have decided to spend the day getting caught up. And in Victoria, BC is Dr. Mary Wynn Ashford. Hi, Mary Wynn, how are you?
Amanda, nice to see you. I'm well, thanks.
Great. Mary Wynn Ashford is a very, very experienced peace activist. She was at one point the co-president of the International Physicians for the Prevention of Nuclear War, which is a very eminent organization, very esteemed organization. Here comes Trudy, that won the Nobel Peace Prize at one point, and has been very, very influential in ending the Cold War and getting Gorbachev and Reagan to make some deals together. So we can offer our thanks for Mary Wynn's wonderful contributions over the years. Hello, Trudy. I've already said that you are about to join us, and we're very glad to see you. Say hello.
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 Everybody.
Trudy.
I've met these people, but not for a long time. Hello.
Hello.
So this is Professor Trudy Gouvier, who is Calgary you're in?
Well, I live in Calgary. My position was in Lethbridge.
Yeah, where is Lethbridge vis-a-vis Calgary?
Lethbridge is 2.5 hours south of Calgary. It's a city of about 100,000 people. Fairly major Alberta Centre. The University of Lethbridge has about 8,000 students.
Okay, well, Trudy is a retired, I guess, or retiring professor of philosophy at the University of Lethbridge, and also has recently been contributing to Peace Magazine, bless your heart. Thank you, Trudy, because we have some issues that are philosophical in nature, and she was very well equipped to address them. Now, in Ottawa is a very old friend, Derek Paul. Hello, Derek.
Well, actually, I'm having to move because I'm in Montreal.
Oh, I beg your pardon, of course. I knew that.
Within the hour.
Well, I don't know. Anyway, I forgot. I know where you live, of course. Derek is a retired physics professor, University of Toronto, who has switched his professional or intellectual pursuits very much away from, I think, the physics end of things toward the economics end of things, and is going to press, or has gone to press, with his the second edition of his book. There you go, A Leap to an Ecological Economy. Very good. And it's really, I found it quite interesting. The first edition, I haven't seen the second one, but we've had a couple of chats about economics. So now we're all very senior members of the peace community of Canada, and with some, international links, I would say, over the years. And so it's time for us to have our, what do you call those, when you get back together with your high school friends, reunion, high school reunion. And what Derek has proposed we do, I think is a good idea. We don't know what we've all been doing lately. And so he suggests that we each take a turn and brief the rest of us on what are our primary concerns right now? What are we most worried about? And of course, that's our job, is to be worried. And I think we do a very good job of worrying. So since this was your idea, Derek, why don't you kick it off and spend a few minutes telling us what your primary concerns are, and if you want 2 or 3 concerns, because I will have a hard time choosing them among the top 2 or 3. Talk about them all, but we can interrupt you at any point, and probably will. So Derek.
Okay, my concerns are the absence of, around where I live, apart from a few very special people, of any sense of urgency. We heard recently on one of your programs that the real danger of climate change is not the heat, the overheating. We can probably, most of us, live with that. The problem is that once the ocean goes acidic, there will come a point where it starts at a certain level of acidity emitting hydrogen sulfide, and that is now believed to be the mechanism that killed off nearly everything 252 million years ago in the Permian Triassic transition. And nobody seems to know this. You had somebody in your program, Mr. Wesbos, I think, who knew this, but it's absolutely absent from every article, every paper, and so on. I've just been reading a book by Bill Gates on how to deal with climate change, but there's no mention of that. There's also no mention of the fact that we cannot get to the interdependence, a balance between the human race and the other species of plants and creatures in this planet. If we have the preponderance of humanity that we have today, we have to somehow slowly reduce the population, not because we can't feed 10 billion people. We might be able to feed 10 billion, but we cannot preserve a balance in nature with 10 billion human beings and the other species declining fairly rapidly as they are now. That's my initial start.
Okay, let me, I'm surprised that you mentioned this issue, because I might have missed, the first one that you mentioned might have been the one that I'm interested in most at the moment, one of the three. But let me just, intervene at the moment to comment on that. It is not a well-known thing. It isn't that it is being ignored yet, because it's not been really well known yet or even established. The person I talked to was Paul Werbos, who used to be in charge of the National Science Foundation granting program. He'd be the guy who finally would decide who got all the money for research. And he was concerned about the research on the Permian extinction, which had been explained in terms of volcanoes from Siberia emitting sulfur or something of that kind. But he says that now he is convinced by just one chapter in a book by a guy named Ward and somebody with a K was his surname, on something like the history of life on Earth or something. That's not the exact title, but this one chapter by a graduate student has turned up the notion that this hydrogen sulfide. Yeah. Now, apparently, the mechanism for that is that runoff of, well, what he worries about is that we have phosphorus runoff, which is going to create huge phytoplankton blooms. And this is celebrated by some people. In fact, there is a whole proposal to solve global warming by dumping iron filings in the ocean so that they will make phytoplankton blooms, and therefore that will remove CO2 from the atmosphere, and these phytoplanktons will sink to the bottom of the ocean and stay there, which would be very nice. But this new analysis claims that if we send phosphorus down our rivers, as we're doing now, and create blooms of phytoplankton, it would be what exactly replicate what happened at the Permian when these rotting phytoplankton sank and took the oxygen with them to the bottom of the ocean. So to me, the interesting question is, which is true? Is phytoplankton going to save us by taking the CO2 out of the atmosphere? or is phytoplankton going to kill us by taking the oxygen out of the atmosphere? And it looks to me like you can't have it both ways, but I'm trying to set up a talk show precisely with those two authors of that book, and with Paul Werbos and some of the people who like Paul Beckwith and Peter Wadhams, who have been on the show more than once talking about climatology. So I think you're pointing to what I think is a puzzle, but whether it is the worst, most ominous threat right now to the world, I'm not sure. Oh, Trudy has to come back in because she got like dropped off or something. Okay, so anyway, that's my, I don't know whether we want a conversation about this, because that's about all I know on the subject, is that I'm puzzled which way it is, but I don't see how it can be both.
I'm just gonna excuse myself for 1 minute because I can hear a radio out my window and I just have to go and close it because it's distracting. I'll be right back.
Sure, great. Okay, yeah, Derek, do you have anything to say further on the subject?
Yes, I do. That is that there is no other explanation than that the ocean the acidic ocean started at some point to emit hydrogen sulfide. If there were another explanation of the huge extinction, then surely I would balance against it. But I don't know, and I knew about the this aspect of the extinction long before Werbos, that book was published. Why the scientists haven't been talking about it? Maybe, I think it's because of cautiousness. I think that the United Nations IPCC people, who are the scientists who do all this research, they all have this idea, but they can't prove it. And they're a bunch of people, I can tell you, because I know lots of them. They can't afford to be proved wrong about anything, else people will look askance at them. And so what they've been doing is saying what they're sure of, like you're not going to like the hurricanes that you're going to have, and you're not going to like the very hot days and the melting ice in the Arctic and so on. But I think they've known about this as long as I have, or longer. In fact, longer, because I only started looking at climate change in 1995. And in 1995, I worked out the because, you know, the climate deniers were saying that no, the heating up to then was probably due to just natural causes, and it wasn't due to all the carbon dioxide we were putting in the air. So I took the trouble to do some calculations, and I worked out the following statistic, which I've never published, so this is news. In 1995, I calculated that the probability that the heating until 1995 was not due to the humans putting carbon dioxide into the air was 2.5%, and the probability that it was due to the human race was 97.5%. But every year since then, that probability of it being just due to natural causes declined very, very rapidly from then till 2010. So that if you talk to a climate denier today, you can say, well, you're right, there is a possibility, but it's only 1/1,000,000% or something like that, that it's not due to the human race. So the probability has gone down that it could be.
Yeah, well, I mean, I don't think that's the question. I mean, I think we all agree that it's probably human beings doing it now. But anyway, I don't know that we can settle this, but I tell you what I'll do. I'll include you in the conversation where I put these people together. And you can question the guys who wrote that book. Their argument was that the hydrogen sulfide originally was thought, or 5-10 years ago, was believed to be from volcanoes in Siberia, but that he doesn't believe that's the case. They don't believe that's the case, and therefore you have to explain it in some of the ways. And they're explaining it in terms of algae blooms or phytoplankton. But here we are monopolizing this whole conversation before anybody gets a chance to share the spotlight. And I'll call on Mary Wynn next. No, let's get Trudy while we got you, because
You've got you there.
the system keeps crashing, and I better be make use of you while I got you.
Well, that's actually a good idea. I do seem to fall off Zoom extremely easily. And if I stop in mid-sentence, that'll be the explanation. I'm not sure I have anything terribly complex to add here. For the last 4 years or so, I've been president of the Plowshares Calgary Society, which is a descendant of Project Plowshares Calgary. We're a descendant because the national group had to relinquish all the local groups due to taxation requirements from Revenue Canada. Anyway, long story. So we're now a not-for-profit incorporated in Alberta. So you
Go on. Uh-oh, you froze.
You spend quite a lot of your time on administrative petty issues, and
Uh-oh, we've lost her. No, there you go. You just moved. Okay. Are you still with us, Trudy?
No, I think she's frozen.
Yeah. Okay, Mary Wynn, your turn.
Okay, well, I'm on a very different trajectory here. Having worked on ICAN, the International Campaign to Abolish Nuclear Weapons, for so long, and getting our municipalities on board with calling for the Canadian government to sign the treaty to abolish nuclear weapons. But I got sidetracked because I read an amazing book by 3 authors, one of whom is Canadian, Maya Groff. Maya Groff is an international law professor at The Hague. And the book is called, now this is a really catchy title, Global Governance and the Emergence of Global Institutions for the 21st Century. I was not actually eager to read this book because it's 550 pages long, but I did, and it is a terrific book. It is about, first of all, the history of global governance, starting way back in the 1800s and the peace movements coming up through the 20th century, through the League of Nations and the founding of the UN, and the way that the UN was designed in order to perpetuate the control of everything by the 5 great powers of the day, the United States, the United Kingdom, France, Russia, and China. And that the General Assembly was set up really to be, as one of the Bush presidents described it, as a debating society, I think he said. They go through, these are very, very distinguished authors, all with lengthy experience at the United Nations. The other 2 authors are Arthur Dahl and Augusto Lopez Claros, who has years of experience at the IMF. So what they're writing about is what can be done now to either reform the United Nations so that all of the issues of war and peace and so on are not controlled by the Security Council and the vetoes there. How do we reform it so that there is citizen participation, and in particular, experts advising the various delegations? How do we increase citizen participation, and how do we increase the legal capacity of the United Nations to make rulings that are binding on all of the countries? So in other words, like the best example that we can compare it to would be the European Union, where nations have to cede some of their sovereignty in order to have global issues resolved. So it's an utterly fascinating book. And I went on, after I'd read it, I brought Jonathan Down, my colleague, in to read it with me. And the two of us studied it and then said, we have to take this to more people. We engaged a group of 5 people, and we've now read the book for the 3rd time. We've been teaching it to university graduates, and now I've just completed a course that I led with them being facilitators, did it on Zoom for 6 weeks, and it was called A Just Global Order. What it's based on is that the global issues we're facing require global solutions. And at the moment, the United Nations is not equipped to address those serious questions. The things that have to be changed, that are absolutely essential, are to reform the General Assembly so that it has authority, to stop the Security Council and transform it into an executive council of the General Assembly, to have a parallel citizens' assembly of about 800 people who would not be personally elected. They would be nominated by accredited non-governmental organizations with the UN. And then you would have gender parity and participation in all of the leading issues and the experts that were needed to serve on those. It would require a change in the militarization of the planet, such that countries would agree to give up their national militaries in order to have an international world peace force, which would be about 850,000 standing troops trained together with common equipment and so on. And that's estimated to cost about 150 billion a year, where the world is spending 1.29 trillion a year right now on global militaries. So that would free up a huge amount of money that would then be used for the other programs. Now, every issue that we're discussing, almost every issue, not yours, Derek, but the other issues of global warming and so on, are addressed in the book in terms of what is needed in global governance. It's an extraordinarily thorough discussion. It's absolutely beautifully written. Every time that we get together to discuss it, we say, I just read chapter 10 again. Isn't it beautifully written? Anyway, we decided that I would do the talking for this group. They helped with all the research on it and the facilitation. We started out thinking we would get 5 people come to this course. Every week over the 6 weeks, it increased until it was 96 people signed up. And of those, about 50 attended in person on Zoom, and 45 went to the recordings that I made of my talks. We did breakout rooms, which were absolutely fascinating. And I also gave them assigned movies to watch because there wasn't time during my short talks. And some of the people said, you know, your assignments were the best part of the whole program. So I'll just tell you very quickly what a couple of those were. The National Film Board movie called Paris 1919, which is Margaret Macmillan's history of the Treaty of Versailles. I included that because when you watch that group of men for the whole hour or whatever it is of the movie, and you realize the world was decided by that group of men. There's not a woman in the film. And how they connived and betrayed one another, and Woodrow Wilson trying, it's fascinating. And then compared that with a movie about Eleanor Roosevelt bringing about the Declaration of Human Rights. And the contrast in that short period of history is absolutely mind-blowing. So that was one thing. Other movies included people like Larry Brilliant talking about the elimination of smallpox and so on. The movies are there for a very deliberate purpose to say, time to open up your worldview because we have to have massive change here. We're not talking about tinkering around the edges. And I'm really embarrassed to tell you, I now think that my work continuing on nuclear weapons is tinkering around the edges, and I continue to do it because you have to tinker around the edges and you have to be out there protesting. But what is needed is these huge global changes. At the end of the course, we asked for feedback. The only criticism was that it wasn't long enough. And we've set it up to start again in September on Saturday mornings because Eastern Canada couldn't join in at 11 at night to do a course. So it'll be at 11 in the morning on Saturday mornings, and people have already signed up to do it again. And I said, no, you don't want to do it again. And they said, there is so much wonderful stuff to absorb here about what is happening in the world. We want to go back and see what more we fit into. And I said, well, we'll add a level 2. So we're putting in a level 2. There were a few issues that I couldn't get to. One, which in fact I planned to phone you about, Trudy, and that was the proposal for an anti-corruption court. This proposal is really, really rolling ahead. It's by global jurists, and it's the people of the same stature who set up the International Criminal Court. It's going to be called the International Anti-Corruption Court. And I didn't realize that the scale of corruption, not just money laundering, but massive state corruption, is so great that they said that if they could recover the funds that are hidden through corruption, it would feed the entire world for 80 years. 80 years. So these are issues of this just massive scale. But the book is about the huge progress that's going on right now, and where we can all fit in doing what we're doing locally, but knowing the goal internationally, knowing that we're fitting into a bigger scheme.
Mary Lynn, I've got a deal for you. How about doing it on live and we can edit it and put it up on my YouTube channel. We have right now, we're using a YouTube channel.
Yeah,
and I'm trying, and I have sections that I can give to different people for different concerns. So let's talk about. I'll call you and let's talk.
It's to go forward through Next Gen U, which is the free university, and it would go out then on their channel, and it would also be asynchronous so that people can watch the talk and then have local group discussions. Mm-hmm. And then if they want to invite me or any of my committee to come and work with them in a small group discussion, we can do that. But we do, it's already recorded, and they get the teaching notes if they go on to IPPNW Canada. Mm-hmm. I don't think it's posted there yet, but it's going on there.
Well, can I call you and we'll talk about
coordinating it, Meta, because it needs to go out. I think people, first of all, people need hope, but not kind of false optimism, but they need to see where massive changes are happening. And the Global Pact for the Environment that's coming up in 2022 is one of those hugely, hugely important things that when you look at it and you think, oh my gosh, this is really, it's taking the idea, it's not, nobody's referring to the book. It's not that, but it's the ideas in the book that are moving forward so fast. I'll say one more thing and then I'll shut up. And that is that when I went to a webinar about the book, and that was on during the week before the UN 75th celebrations, mm-hmm. They had a webinar just on this book and had the 3 authors there. The moderator was a scholar who held up the book to the camera and he said, I love this book. I used up 3 highlighter marker pens reading this book. And so did I. It's $140 to buy it, but I printed it. It's a free download. It's a free download from Cambridge University Press. Mm-hmm. So I downloaded it and had it printed up in 4 sections, and I covered it with notes and highlighter markers and everything else, sticky tapes. Anyway, so that's what I'm doing now. I'll be quiet.
Okay, that's wonderful to be, these are things I wouldn't have known, it's really important for us to be back in touch. Thank you. Okay, Trudy,
Okay, well,
welcome back.
I'm
Let's,
back, and I don't know how long I'll manage here, so I just try to say a few things quickly. So
Yeah.
my concerns have not been as exalted as these others that we've heard, and I'm certainly not as well informed. Just working at the local level, I find it's hard to get people interested in peace causes. It's especially hard if they're young. We have had some success through a young staff person that we managed to hire. So we now have a board for the Plowshares Calgary Society, which does have some younger people. I am still president, but won't be as of September. And we hope to have a young president, and people are really interested in peace education. We got some funding through government summer employment program. So for 2 part-time positions, so one person is working now, and we'll be hiring another one who will go from August into December. Apart from that, I don't know how great our successes have been. I cut off Zoom and didn't hear the title of this wonderful book that Mary Wynn was describing. So Mary Wynn, can you tell me the title?
I'll tell you it again. Global Governance.
Okay, Global Governance.
And the Emergence of Global Institutions.
And the Emergence of Global Institutions. Thank you very much.
For the 21st century.
Global Institutions for the 21st century.
And it's Cambridge University Press. And if you go onto the website, it's a free download. You can read it online, or you can download it, or you can buy it. If you're with the university, they might buy it.
Yeah, okay, well, great. I'll get someone else to order it for universities. I'm not with the university formally anymore, but maybe we can have a study group on that. Anyway, we feel that we survived the pandemic. We survived it with some money from the government and some younger people. We're thinking about where to go next. The local Plowshares group, some of the original members from 1982 are still involved, and we're getting on. So we need to be replaced, and we're working on that. So I see, in terms of urgency, which was mentioned, I think it's urgent to get younger people involved and informed and active, because dedicated as some of us are and would like to remain, and we have sterling examples here, this can't go on forever. And if you get someone really interested and knowledgeable when they're 25, I think you have a lot of potential there. So you need to combine the wisdom of the elders with some of the energy and talent of these younger people. And we've been trying to do that, and we hope to branch out. I'm personally really concerned about local and national issues in terms of, despicable behavior towards Muslim persons and these horrifying discoveries of these unmarked graves. And I'm hoping that a group calling itself a peace group can say or do something useful about these things. But I confess that I don't know what it is at the moment. So I guess my interests have been, because I've had this role of president of this group, my interests have been more local in the last 4 or 5 years.
I think we're all facing succession issues. I certainly spend every night lying awake thinking, oh Lord, where do I find somebody or somebody's, a bunch of people. And I think Mary Wynn and I would have different ideas about succession. And because I taught 20 some years and several thousand peace students, well, taught them, and not all of them were peace students, but a lot of them. And they never become peace activists. But the best place to get your next generation of leaders is look at people who are turning 65, because you get new people coming through, and at 65 they're retiring. They still have a lot of energy, and those are the people who are really good for recruiting. And if you spend your time trying to recruit students, lots of luck. But I mean, Mary Wynn had very different experience, or hopes to anyway. But my experience is that young people simply have a sort of moment when they need to get free of old folks and be on their own, and so they go off and do, they're going to have a different life for a few years of finding themselves and finding their own niche. But when they get to be 65, then they're really ready. And so try it that way. Mary Wynn.
I'll respond to that.
Yeah, right. Mary Wynn and I have had a go around on this before. So it's your turn, dear.
I'm very keen on engaging the young people. We took a big chance a year ago when we were hiring a staff person for IBPNW Canada, because we had just reestablished ourselves as a charitable organization. And our membership and supporters are large, nothing compared to the 1980s, but significant, but not active. And so we decided to take a big chance. We hired 2 university students. They're 2 young women who are in political science at McGill. One's in physics and political science, which is an interesting combination, Derek. I guess you would approve of that. We've hired them, and they work for us half-time each, so equivalent to a full staff person. And they have taken government grants to have administrative assistants and interns studying different approaches to high school students and university students. I would say they've multiplied our activity tenfold. We now have a regular monthly meeting with outstanding speakers, and these are recorded and put up on our website. Our website is now really active. Our newsletter comes out monthly, and it's become really exciting. They're posting to Facebook every 3 days. They use Instagram. I hate all that stuff, but they do it, and they're keeping it all up. They are extremely knowledgeable. The 2 staff that we've hired, one of them trained with ICANN in Nagasaki and Hiroshima 2 summers ago, and they have both continued to upgrade their knowledge of nuclear weapons and ICANN and campaigning and so on. But their emphasis is on consolidating student interest across the country. So they started with a group in Montreal that expanded to about 25 students, and each of us went on Zoom, spoke to those young people. And from that, I ended up with a small group at the University of Alberta, spoke to them, and they're much more interested in human rights and issues of race. And then I'm just trying to think of where are the other ones. When they put out the request for interns to come for free to work with our staff, we got 5 applications right away. We had many more applications for the paid positions, and so ended up getting outstanding people. We also got young people in their late 20s applying, but the government grants stipulated students, and we have set the age level. I can't remember what the age level was, but it cut out a 29-year-old. So the interest is there. They're looking for jobs. They're idealistic. They're supremely capable of university level research. The other place that we're engaging young people is that Jonathan Down and I mentor medical students who are interested in doing a research project. Most of the schools now have an option period for medical students in each year, and they can put in a certain number of hours. The students choose how many hours. So we usually get the ones that want to do a 60-hour project. And they choose a research project, and then we act as their mentors. And that's been very, very rewarding.
What are some of the projects that they've taken on?
Yes, one did, Vincent So did the medical issues, the health consequences of the sanctions on North Korea. He was originally from South Korea, but grew up in Canada. and was very concerned and wanted to know more about reunification and what's going on there. Did a terrific amount of research and then had a short blog published in the Canadian Medical Journal as a result of that short time with us. Another one worked on issues of eco-anxiety with high school students.
What?
And
With what?
Eco-anxiety, because high school teachers are telling doctors that there is really an epidemic of anxiety and depression in high schools, and that they needed suggestions, and we needed to look at this as an issue. It's not anxiety about exams and jobs so much as what is the future. So this student wrote an article which really was featured in Teacher Magazine, a national teachers magazine, about addressing anxiety and listening and approaches to take. Another one wrote about the refugee counseling program, therapy program in Victoria, where traumatized refugees who need therapy, not desperately need psychotherapy, had been getting therapy from volunteer therapists here in Victoria. But there were 12 of them who spent about 3 years doing all of this work for free. And then the demand was growing so much, they also got government grants. And now they have an extensive, very highly organized program for
Sorry,
working.
there's government grants to fund
To
people who
fund
do these
the
volunteer
therapists.
projects?
Yeah, the therapists are now being paid so that they can continue. Plus, they have to pay a low amount for translators, because you cannot do therapy with traumatized refugees if you don't have translators and interpreters. And then they discovered that they had to engage the entire family. So this program has grown, and a medical student wrote that one up for us and had it published in the Victoria magazine. I have a sign on my door that says, "Do not ring the doorbell," but we're going to ignore it. Anyway, and then the most recent one has done a study about when medical workers go into high-risk zones, like war zones, like Médecins Sans Frontières and other charitable organizations. When they go to do that work, what are the security arrangements, and are they contracting out to outside security firms? Are they protected by military? How does that work? And we encouraged him to look at the whole ethical situation of trying to provide safety for workers doing humanitarian work. So he has done a brilliant piece and submitted it.
That's a very interesting question. What was his conclusion about how to provide security for these people? Because I've got a recollection I want to bring to bear on this.
Yeah, it's complex, Matt. I don't think I can summarize it, but he goes into ethics of humanitarian work and what the doctor's role is. He's written it up for the British Columbia Medical Journal, and I'm quite sure that they'll run it. But I wonder if I can put him in touch with you and see if he could write a shortened version for you for Peace Magazine.
Well, or a talk show. I do talk shows every day of the week.
Terrific personality.
Weekday.
Yeah,
the reason you making my ears flap is I'm thinking back to maybe 20 years ago or more, 25, when down at the Harborfront there was a debate. It wasn't billed as a debate, but it turned out to be a debate between James Orbinski and Louis Mackenzie. Louis Mackenzie being the guy who was in charge of the military, the peacekeepers in Sarajevo.
Yeah.
Well, what he had decided to do, Mackenzie had tried to do, was he didn't have any way, these peacekeepers, they didn't have anything to do. They couldn't shoot at the Serbs, or they couldn't do any of the military things. So he assigned them to be the guards for the doctors. So there were always physicians being called upon, physician for the Médecins Sans Frontières doctors were there, I gather. And they would be called upon to go take care of somebody whose leg had been blown off or something. And so these peacekeepers would go with him. Now, what James Orbinski did in that conversation, he said, leave us alone. He said, you're confusing people. You have these military people coming along with us doctors, and they think, and then we become targets.
That's
or
right.
it's confusing about what. There are other places where the peacekeepers have been charged with running up on giving people, ringing on the doorbell and giving people a bag of groceries. Well, yes, the people need groceries, but what happens when you get the peacekeepers into the business of humanitarian work is you blur the distinction between them. And Orbinski at that point said, don't do that.
Yeah.
So that's why I thought, if this guy is taking a different position, I don't know that you could say that there was any security, because I think Orbinski was saying, we take our chances when we go take care of people. We don't have security, and we know that we're not getting it. And you're not making us more secure if you come along with us.
That's right. He also addresses the conflicts that come up if you choose to have security by the local people, and then you have to pay them. And then pretty soon you find yourself bribing. And the issues are really, really complex. But he did a beautiful job, and there's not a lot written in the literature. He had a hard time, in fact, searching this in the literature, because the humanitarian organizations don't write it up for that. Mm-hmm. And there was one key article where he said, this just doesn't tell me what's happened since 2010. And I said, well, phone the author. And he was dumbfounded. He said, phone the author. And I said, she'll be so delighted that somebody cares about her writing. She will. Mm-hmm. And she did. She gave him lots of answers and things to follow up. But it was his thinking through the ethical dilemmas that I think makes his article so interesting.
Mm-hmm. Which way did he come down on it? Did he say that they needed some kind of security? But if so, what did he want?
No, he said that if you're thinking of going and working in a war zone, you're going to be taking your chances.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, that fits what I think Orbinski said at that point. Yeah. And I imagine he would still say it.
That they can't guarantee your security, and you just have to work as much as you can in establishing trust. Yeah.
Okay, good. Well, now is Trudy gone again? Poor lady. Yeah. So, Derek, you've been listening quietly. Do you have opinions on any of our topics?
Some questions I want to ask Mary Wynne about what she said, but I want to go right back to what she said at first, which is about this remarkable book. And of course, the reforming the United Nations, as Mary Wynne knows, is a concern that was very much a concern in Science for Peace.
Yes, absolutely.
A remarkable conference was held around 1983, if I remember, and or 4, and Eric Fawcett and Hannah Newcomb edited a book which was cited to be the best book on the subject up to that time. In 1985 it was published. It was simply called United Nations Reform. And some of the things Mary Wynne mentioned from this new book sounded exactly like 3 of the issues that were discussed in Eric Fawcett and Hannah Newcomb's book, 1985. So it brought me back to that, and I've often wondered why one doesn't hear more about the United Nations Economic and Social Council. There isn't just one council. Everybody knows about the Security Council because it's so infamous, but I think that one of the things that we can do, in fact, it's the strongest recommendation in my book, is that the United Nations Economic and Security Council, I'll read it to you if you like, but if it's not important that I read it now. But I think this council has a very, very major role, and I want to know what these three authors say about seeing the Economic and Social Council of the UN, or do they want to reform that as well?
Well, they do talk about it, Eric, and I'm sorry you're touching on something that my feeble brain has not held on to. They talk about ECOSOC being weakened and its tasks being taken over. And I can't tell you, actually, I can probably, well, no, I'll tell you to look it up. If you go to the Cambridge website, Cambridge University Press, look up the book, and then go to the index and look up ECOSOC. You'll get the section where they describe what's happening.
Excellent. Thank you very much. I'm going to read you what my #1 recommendation is in my book, that the United Nations Economic and Social Council prepare a declaration to be signed by all UN member nations to the effect that world economic affairs, both within and among nations, shall henceforth be conducted on the basis that the health and well-being of the ecosphere and of humanity shall be the overriding priority for the future of this planet, and that every human being shall be taught this general goal. That's the #1 recommendation in my book on a change in the economic system.
That is great, and it would be congruent. I don't know, they wouldn't say to ECOSOC in the book. I know that, but it's congruent with the direction of everything that they're saying, and it's also congruent with this. I suggest that you look at Global Pact for the Environment.
Yes.
And look up their website, because they're talking about the changes that they're recommending for a high-level meeting of presidents and prime ministers to be held in 2022.
Yes.
And now let me think of some of the details that would interest you. This is being worked on right now by international jurists who are writing the tenets, I guess, for an agreement that will be signed by these presidents and prime ministers that will be legally binding. And they're writing this information so that the diplomats who attend have the correct phrasing for everything and why it's phrased that way, to make sure that the agreements are legally binding and that they are going to benefit the environment. But it's social as well as environment. I mean, they're locked together. And the whole thing is designed to recognize we're at a time when all these issues are locked together. We have to address them all together. And that's where I'm finding a lot of hope in this, simply in the fact that international jurists are working on it so hard a year in advance.
It's tremendously encouraging.
Yes.
If you knew Helmut Burkhardt, but at one time, around about 1999, he was president of Science for Peace, and his major interest was changes in global governance, so that he would have been absolutely thrilled about this. He died about 3 years ago, and he would have been thrilled about these developments that you're talking about.
And you know, they pick up on these key books all the way through. They quote Jonathan Schell all the time, which I just love because I thought Jonathan Schell was so brilliant. But they also, in tracing the history, they give credit to all the thinking that's gone on with Grenville Clark and Albert Einstein and Bertrand Russell and so on. And it all builds. The book is sort of spiral in the way that it goes back to principles again and again and again as it goes. I'm just in awe of the writing.
Well, this is so encouraging. I'm just thrilled with this news. I think it's fantastic.
Well, I am too, Derek. That's why I'm so excited about working on this course.
Is equally fascinated, and poor our fourth partner today is unfortunately cut off, but I think she liked it too. So this is really very good. Yeah. And I haven't yet, by the way, written to the United Nations Economic Council because I've just been too busy.
Yeah.
My book is appearing in a third edition, which is a lot changed from the second edition. It's got much more information in, and it's shorter.
Always great. It's not 550 pages. Thank you.
And
Yeah.
and I've been working absolutely almost day and night to get the last few things done so that I can send correct texts to publishing houses. And they also want these people, they want the authors to do the word list for the index. They're prepared to do the index, which is a lot of work, but they're not prepared to select which words to put in the index. You
Right.
do that. I didn't know. Did you have this with your books, Meta?
Oh, I love making indexes.
Yeah.
You use Excel and it is just absolutely fun. I would even love to volunteer to do it for you because I enjoy it so much. There's no reason for you to have anybody else do it for you. It's just a piece of cake. If you don't know how, I'll show you how in 5 minutes.
Oh, please.
But let me go back to another thing about this book that Mary Wynn gave us a précis of, and that is the reference to the Parliamentary Assembly, or the new extra house of, I guess it's what I would call Parliamentary Assembly, but your proposal seems to be that it would be elected by NGOs. Well, that's an
Nominated.
Oh,
And
okay.
then there would be a selection committee that is elected by the General Assembly. So the selection committee has the set of criteria they're looking for. They look through all the applications. This is my understanding. They look through the applications and they make the choices. And it would be some 700 people. So it would be representative in all the various ways that we would want.
Well, I have never heard such a proposal. Of course, what we normally hear is the idea of having every human being on the planet who's adult have a vote to choose, direct election to a parliamentary assembly. I don't think that is working very well. When you see how it's doing in the EU, people are very disenchanted with the EU, not just in Britain because, of Brexit, but all over the place. They're saying they don't know the people who are representing them, and they don't feel that they have any influence through their representatives. So I think there is some problem about that. But
let me just interrupt there, Nick. They're not representing their nation or an interest,
right.
But they are representing, I guess, their knowledge. They're bringing their expertise as a scientist or whatever. They're bringing all of these different perspectives. The nation states still have representation, and it's weighted representation. And I don't think we have time to go into how they weight it, but there is a formula that's been developed a long time ago. So the nation states are still there, but their influence is not so much sovereignty anymore. And that's where the Parliamentary Assembly
you still have the General Assembly, and the General Assembly is definitely a sovereignty oriented. They're representing nations, not people.
You have the General Assembly representing nations, and you have a Parliamentary Assembly. And in the initial years, the Parliamentary Assembly would be advisory, but it would gradually be combined somehow with the General Assembly.
Well, there's certainly attractive things about that, mainly because I'm just simply not convinced anymore that people can elect representatives for the whole population of the world. Can't do it. But the alternative that has normally been put forward, as, for example, Doug Roach said, the first general parliamentary assembly would not be directly elected by people, but rather would be, each country would be invited to send a certain number of their own MPs, people who are already members of parliament in their country, could then be delegates to the Parliamentary Assembly. And then maybe some other kind of arrangement could be worked out. I don't know. In any case, I have some qualms about the I used to believe that NGOs were the future of the world, that everything, if we could just turn more decision-making power over to you and me and our groups, that we'd be in better shape. But I don't necessarily believe that anymore.
No.
And so I think that, the question of having a new parliamentary assembly, I think is extremely important. I really love to see it happen, but it makes all the difference in the world what kind of delegates you get and where you get them and what their mandate might be.
Yeah. UNEP has already tried this. This is why I get excited, is that with all of these proposals, even though nothing's sort of going through officially, it's happening in different parts of the world, UN and other agencies. But in particular, UNEP called for people to apply through their organization to serve on a parliamentary assembly that would accompany UNEP's exploration or study of responsible banking. Whoa, the United Nations Environment Program is looking at responsible banking, and they are bringing in civil society representatives to discuss that with them. So I see that as progress. They're not coming in with an axe to grind. They're coming in to a discussion.
That's good. I'm working a bit on responsible banking myself, so I find that interesting. I have one other question for Mary Wynne. You said something about an anti-corruption court.
Yeah.
Did you get any idea from the reading of that whether it was partly intended to deal with dictators and with tyrants, with tyranny?
Yes.
That part of the reason, because I have the very last peace research paper I produced was one that I said we could deal with disarmament. We know how to, it's just that the world isn't doing it. But we don't have ways yet of dealing with tyranny. And that is the start to that, is it, this anti-corruption court?
Yeah, they talk about grand corruption, not just corruption as I had understood, money laundering,
Yes.
but grand corruption is where the entire state has become captured. So you have the government, the military, the judiciary, and the police are all on the take. They're all together and they're all sending their money out of the country to all these other,
Impoverishing everybody else.
Impoverishing everyone else, but also locking everything into, as it is in Guatemala, murder squads and all of that,
And Haiti also.
Yeah. So they are talking. Well, the webinar that I went to on that one, Judge Mark Wolf is a key person in the United States. And he was talking about the urgency and saying, I'm so hopeful, though, because when I was working to establish the International Criminal Court, I remember this stage, and we're at that stage where it's doable. We can see it coming now.
That's fantastic.
Oh, I'm telling you, I just go from one hopeful thing to another.
It's been bothering me for a long time that I couldn't see any progress in that. I could see little bits of progress in most areas, but not in that area.
Okay, so you look up III. That is International Integrity Initiative or something. International Integrity, I think maybe Initiative. Anyway, it's III, and that's this guy, Mark Wolf, and that's the organization they keep referring to.
How do you spell Wolf?
WOLF.
Oh, like that, okay.
Mark Wolf.
Mark with a K.
Mark K, M-A-R-K, yeah.
Mark Wolf. Thank you very much.
A pleasure. Really nice to see you and talk to you again.
You too.
I think we've lost Meta.
Yeah, Meta went off a moment ago.
Okay.
We
Well,
probably weren't recorded for that last bit, but who cares?
Who cares? Okay, nice to see you.